I think in terms of let's start with rigging. We'll start with rigging. I've got a couple of little tests of things that I did over here. But I want to start by making something from scratch. I'm just gonna I made an example of one over here. I'm just gonna make a little weird kind of character to start with. This could be any sort of character. I'm just gonna make a kind of strange, unusual type of character, or maybe I'll try and make a bad kind of dog or something. So first thing I want to do is just make it. I'm going to go into the modeling tools and just show all the way through making something from scratch in Unreal. So the process, which is only really recently appeared, being able to go all the way through from modeling something to adding a skeleton to then adding a rig to it, which we would normally have had to have gone outside of Unreal for most of that. So if I start off with just a very simple box, I'm just going to add this box, just turn that bit off so it doesn't snap to the crazy ground there. I'm going to add this box in and I'm going to move it up in the air a little bit. I'm going to hit accept. Okay, so now I've got this. I'm going to turn this into some sort of animal. And I'm going to do that just by going to the dynamic sculpt. And I'm going to sculpt this thing into some sort of creature. So this is the dynamic sculpt. It's in the deform menu. And this will take a mesh, no matter how low resolution it is. This one's currently very low resolution, and it will add resolution, kind of like Dynamesh in ZBrush, as we sculpt it. I want a bit of a bigger brush, so I'm going to create a bigger brush there, and let's go ahead and start sculpting. So it's just going to let me do it. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to start just by sculpting some sort of head. I want to kind of ding these corners in a little bit. I'm going to add some legs. This is not meant to win any awards, so don't be judging me. All right, I'm just going to add a leg on the front. I'm going to add a leg on the back and another leg. Do that again. There we go. And another one in the corner. So not the practice that some kind of high-end creature sculptor would be doing. But if you take a little bit of time in here, you maybe you can adjust. You can do a lot more than you used to be able to in this section. I'm just gonna ding these in a little bit, and there's some more settings that we can use in here. But if I go uh, here to smooth, then I can kind of smooth this out. No, maybe it's a little bit of a demo of where some of the modeling tools I've got to. Um, but probably something that you guys have been somewhat aware of, but just um, knowing that you can do this type of thing in Unreal, I think is worth a mention. So just a very, very quick amount of that. Maybe I'll go to, we had move. I can do inflate as well. So let's just build like some weird kind of head for this creature like that. And then, all right, that'll do. Yeah, it's horrible, but there we go. If I spend a bit more time on it, maybe I'll like inflate his leg a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna hit accept. I'm gonna save it, and that is Scott.
Yeah, quick question. So how
Yes.
did you switch between things like inflate and smoothing and all that?
Oh, sure. So if you go to dynamic sculpt,
Yep.
right near the bottom, um, you have sorry, near the
Oh,
top, in
brush type.
fact,
Brush
brush
type.
type.
Okay,
Yeah,
excellent.
inflate,
Okay.
move. There's quite a lot of them now.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Yeah, I had to wrestle with a metahuman head to kind of get rid of her neck, and I used those
Right.
tools, but didn't quite get the handle of it. But yeah, thanks for showing that.
No problem. Yeah, it's getting a bit more sophisticated in there, and you could probably do quite a lot of what you want to do in there now. Obviously, it doesn't compete with 20 years of advances in other modeling tools yet, but you can see where they're going. So now we've got this mesh. I can jump out of modeling mode, so I've got my character, and I'm going to add a skeleton to this. This is the next thing I'm going to do. Lee, before I do that, you have a question?
Yeah. So with what you're doing here with the rigging, can we just throw something in from Blender? Would that
Yep,
work? Oh, okay.
yep. Doesn't matter.
All
It
right.
doesn't care. Once it's got into here and it's like just polygons, Unreal doesn't care where it came from. And you
Okay.
could bring something in from Blender and then do change it in here, adapt it in here. It doesn't matter. It will do things to the mesh that you've given it. Good
Awesome.
question.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. All right, so this mesh, if I have it selected, and I just right click on it, and I browse to the asset, and I go find it, you can see it's added it in this folder down here, and maybe maybe I would tidy this up a little bit more and put it somewhere proper. But for now, I'm just going to go save all. Something's happened to my shortcut. So I've got my static mesh. There it is. Now, if I want to add a skeleton to it, I need to make sure I've got the skeletal mesh editing tools available, which I think at this point are on by default, whereas you used to have to go open the plugins and go skeletal mesh editing tools, and just make sure that is enabled. If you if it's not, enable it, do a restart if you have to. But I think by default they're now just switching that on. So if I now go back to my mesh here, right click on the mesh and go convert to skeletal mesh right at the top there. So convert to skeletal mesh, that will give me some options. So I can create a new one. Where do I place the root bone? I want this at let's say, the center of my mesh, not the bottom center. I'm going to place this at the center of the mesh. Um, and there's a few options that you can change it in the skeletal mesh editor, but this is how we start. I'm going to say convert, and then now you can see that it's created these two additional things here, a skeletal mesh and a skeleton. And again, I'm going to hit save. So now I've got my weird donkey donkey, and I've got my skeletal mesh. Now, it's not going to be a very good skeleton at the moment because it's just the default skeleton. So if I double click on my skeletal mesh, it will bring up the skeletal mesh editor. And you can see, I'm just going to slow my camera down a little bit so I can tool around here a little, a little more easily. Okay, so we have skeleton. You can see the bone, the root bone in there. And what I want to do is go to my skeleton section in the top, in the left here. Just expand that window, go to edit skeleton, and I'm in edit mode. And now we can see that I can change things. So if I want my root bone, this this one right here, then maybe I'm going to want that somewhere a bit more practical and sensible, maybe up there. Let's say we'll put it up there. So I can decide where I want that bone to be. And now I can do add. I go to the top left here and say add. I can now add bones to it. And the cool thing is that this is going to try and add bones where you tell them to be added. So we can say here, based on the mesh, within the mesh, or camera plane. And the cool thing is, wherever you project your pointer there, it's going to find the inside of the mesh. This is the really cool part. It's used to take a while. Find the inside of the mesh, and it's going to put it right at the top of that leg. Isn't that nice? Save me a bunch of work. So that's going to be the top of my leg. Then let's say we'll add a knee and a foot, and then we'll add another one at the bottom there. Okay, so that's done. It's put all of my joints inside that leg for me, which is super cool. And if I go over here, then I can add, if I go back to my root bone here, then I'll add one over there and go add a knee and an ankle and a toe. So it's done the same thing over there, which is pretty cool. I'll probably mirror these in some way, but I'm not going to focus on that right now. In here, you can mirror it, but my model's a bit janky, so I'm just going to go ahead and draw these back out again. So I'm going to go back up to my root bone and go click. Oh, I need to be in add mode. Back up to my root bone, click, and create a knee and a heel and a toe. And then um, again, not looking for any rigging awards here, so no judgment. We'll click on the root bone again, and there, a knee, an ankle, and a toe. And then we'll hit. Actually, what I will also do is go up here to the root, um, and then I'm going to go add a couple more joints in here. We'll add a neck joint, couple spine joints, a head joint, and then a top joint. And I'll hit accept. And now hopefully there's a horrible deformed creature that has got a skeleton in it. Now what I can do is go to skin, bind skin, and it's done a skin bind. And if I hit accept, I can now test that out. So if I grab my knee down here and bend it, there we go. Got it's now bending the character's knee, which is pretty cool. And I would obviously spend more time in here cleaning up the joints, making sure they're tidy, making sure they're named properly and they're not called joint 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Doing it the proper way. But for now, I'm just going to say, okay, that's good, and we will move that onto the other monitor.
So I'm assuming you can add constraints, right?
Well, we're going to get onto the rig in a second.
Yeah. All right.
So,
Cool.
yeah. Richard.
Before you move back, can you go back to that previous
Yes.
window? Is there a way of seeing the influence of each of the bones when you click on them, like you can in Maya
Yeah.
search?
If you go to edit weights,
There we
now
go. Yeah.
this is the bit that was missing before, so I can go in here. I haven't done a ton of this yet,
That's
but
okay.
we got the edit weights, we have brush mode, and I have a brush that I believe this has been made by some of the people that made it in some of the other programs. So it's
Yeah.
been taking a minute for it to get to this state, but it should at this point be pretty reflective of the experience in Maya. If we got a strength of 1, I think you can do replace and add and relax and all the things that you used to want to do. Like you could do it based on a surface or in a volume. So if we do replace and we go up to let's say the head joint like this, and then we paint the weights on the head. And
Is that screen laggy, or is it just because you're
no,
broadcasting your screen?
it's for me, it's
All right,
not
cool.
laggy. Um, it may be if I turn on, I don't know if this is better or worse to turn on
No, all it
optimals,
was is
probably.
because when you're in Maya painting weights, obviously it's very smooth and quick, and that's
Yep,
why I was wondering if it was the same with you on
got it.
this.
Yep. No, it's pretty decent actually on this kind of density of a mesh anyway.
Hmm.
I have tried up to like the last one I did was about 60K. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, with my head there, I can then go replace and paint that strength out of the back of the body so we can take all of that weight out of the head because we wouldn't want that. But this is yeah, it's pretty smooth. No lag really for me. Maybe some broadcast lag, but
Yeah, so
yeah.
that's probably what it is. Yeah. Is there a lasso tool to remove skin weights or add skin weights quickly or not?
I don't know. We've got a
It's
brush,
just
we've
a
got
wild stab in the dark there, that's all.
mesh there, which I guess yeah. So I
Oh,
don't
there
know if
we
there's a
go.
lasso, but there is a marquee select, and then you can select
Oh,
grow,
excellent. There you
shrink.
go.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty decent. But yeah, if I would spend a lot more time in here, but uh trying to for anyone who's not familiar to rigging, Richard is a little bit familiar with rigging. And for anyone who's not, this is the map that basically tells the mesh for a bone, for the head bone. The color represents how much influence does the bone have on the vertex. So if it's white, it has complete influence over it. If it's black, it has no influence. And if it's somewhere in between, it has like partial influence. So anyway, I'm not going to finesse this to the end, but let's say that is done. And now we've got our head mesh with the ability to move it around. I've kind of messed it up a bit though by painting
All right,
those
you've got
weights.
some extra secondary motion there.
I feel like you can
Exactly.
make a really cool monster with this, Ed. This is cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I'll just undone that work because I would go back in and finesse it. But yeah, you can make a weird in not very long, a weird monster. And then the next cool bit is now if I just hit save on that asset, now we have a weird creature in there. So I can, keep that in there as a reference. But what I'm going to do next is right click on the skeletal mesh and I'm going to go to create at the top and I'm going to go to mod under control rig and I go to modular rig. And if I hit modular rig, now that is going to create a control rig asset. And if I double click on that, there we go. So now I've got my control rig for my weird creature. So straight away, it's already picked up the skeleton. It's given me a bunch of controls. And one of the first things that I can do, because you can see we've got the root joint there, and then it's got away from the root joint, there's these points here that you can see inside the circles. Now, those, what it's calling sockets, are really for the rigging process so that we know by dragging and dropping some of these modules here on the left, we know how or where those modules are going to land and attach to and build rig around. So the question before about things like constraints, those once normally for anyone not as familiar with rigging, you've got a mesh and then you have a skeleton, which is really just a bunch of points. And then you've got the skin, which is the relationship between the skeleton and the mesh and how the skeleton deforms the mesh. And then you don't want to be grabbing skeletons as an animator. What you really want to do is grab a control system or a thing that's more akin to what a puppeteer would use. So being able to grab the controls as opposed to grabbing the skeleton. So this is kind of like there's lots of different ways you can do this in other programs, but the more sophisticated studios that did this kind of work would usually have scripted rig builders, where we who didn't start in those big studios would have to build all of this from scratch. So if you've gone through the ranks of visual effects, you would have been building things in this way. Build a mesh, build a skeleton, skin the skeleton to the mesh, and then go through the process of building a control rig around the outside of it, which is really to take a bunch of shapes that then drive the animation of those joints that then in turn drive the animation of the mesh. And then maybe you hit on top of that you might have some more sophistication like a muscle system or some kind of dynamic component. But this control system in here, we've got the controls are
I was going to say, is that the central main control of the whole thing? It is, isn't it? Like the root
yeah,
controller. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So the question here, before you start adding
Yeah.
stuff, can that root controller be offset to the ground and
Yes.
made bigger as such?
If you go to, sorry, 1 second. If we go to the shape here, under the shape, we should be able to affect the position of that shape. I might come back to that, but you
Oh,
certainly
there's the
can. Oh,
offset
there we
there.
go.
Is it locked?
Yeah, it might be I'm in the wrong mode at the moment, but
That's all right. No, it's just a
essentially,
thought. That's all.
yeah, you definitely can, and I have, and yeah, I'll come back to you on that one.
Okay.
So the controls, if I go back to the modules here now, if we're back in the skeleton over here, these little points here, we have the ability to drop modules on. We could also build, if I was just in the regular control rig window, we'd be building the control rig. We would be effectively creating nodes to create these rigs, which is fine, and you've got lots of control when you're doing it that way. And under the hood, this is also doing it that way. But what this is an easier layer over the top to allow us to be able to create controls without understanding all of the blueprint coding that's needed to be able to do that. And how to get it to, because what you want is your control to drive the position of the joint, but you also want the joint to bring the control with it. And the feedback loop there is something which is complex to program. So I'm going to show just for 1 second how we can grab maybe a hind leg module, and then if I drag it into the window, it's now added hind leg to my leg over here. And if I move this leg, you can now see that leg control has IK in it, and it's done all of that work for me, and it's now driving the bones, but it's also built the behind the scenes systems to be able to do various forwards and backwards solves. So that's pretty cool. Scott,
Yeah.
question?
So when you brought this in, so you have your skeleton in there, and you already have that yellow octagon
Yes.
in the or hexagon, whatever. Did
Yep.
that was built automatically, or did you have to hit
Yep.
something to do that?
No, it finds the root bone and then tries to do its best to then build
Okay.
you at least the first bone. And you can see the root
Hmm.
over here, the module hierarchy. You've got the root component, which is this one right here. And then maybe this is where I was looking for the positional information for it. But yeah, essentially you've got your root control, you've got your hind leg now that I added.
Mm,
And if I
cool.
was to go back in, I can add another hind leg over there. That's built me another one. I'm going to add, so some of the new stuff in here as well is that we've now got more like quadruped rig modules in here. We've also got some interesting stuff like pistons, and that would be where some of your constraint questions would live in sort of mechanical systems that that tend to have a lot of constraints in their rigs. But we've got more sophistication in here in the rig modules. We have things like quadrupedal spines or animal spines. So being able to add, and if I was rigging this really properly, I would have gone ahead and connected my my shoulder and well, whatever. That's not a shoulder, but for front leg system shoulder, if you want to call it that on an animal. Yeah, they have shoulders. To the neck as opposed to the back there, but
Okay.
we can
I
add a
don't.
spine, we can add a hind leg, front leg.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't see a front leg. What would you use for
I think it's
that?
just leg. You've got hind leg and
Um,
then you've got leg. That's like a
well,
regular
well,
front
that's
leg.
bending backwards because the front leg would probably be more like your arms. So maybe it's an arm one. Yeah,
This
because
one, I think it's just facing the other way.
the elbow's backwards.
Yeah, I think it's just
Okay.
facing to the left, but it's still a front leg
No,
orientation.
no, that's like a bipedal leg,
Yeah,
right? I think it'd be probably closer to your arm because your front arms wouldn't bend that way; they bend the other way.
right.
Uh,
You could still make it out of one of
Yeah.
those modules and then also
Okay.
another bone.
I
But yeah,
see.
good point.
Okay.
And then probably we'll see an evolution of this to include even more options, having more complete animals, maybe even more sophisticated tentacle components. At the moment, we can create things like that out of these systems, but it's a little harder. So with this, I'm just going to add 4 hind leg. I'll do some front legs for these. So go front leg. It's going to let me do that. Didn't want me to do that. Or maybe I just dropped it onto the wrong sphere. Let me just undo. So we'll try that one more time. Add a front leg. Doesn't like it. I'm going to add a hind leg. Add another one. And okay, so I've got some boxes for controls. I've got some pole vector constraints that you can see there going backwards of the knee, and I've got the ability to do a quadruped, and I can add individual controls to this. I can add like another example. I could add a chain. Let me just grab this chain, and I can add it to this module here. Now that's added a chain control to the neck and head. That may not be the way that I want to do it, so I might go get this and edit it and bring it back to being that the head is controlled by a chain. But with this, I can then go in and add the controls that I want to do whatever I want. If this is a really specific animal rig, I would be setting this up way more carefully than this, but just meant to show really quickly how you can go from. And if I wasn't explaining it at the same time, I would have done it even faster. So the essence here is the speed with which you can bring something in. If you bring in a character from a marketplace that doesn't have a rig, or you build your own character and you want to build a rig, this is feasibly a place where you can go do it now. I'm going to hit compile and I'm going to bring this back over here. And now I'm going to go to my cinematics folder. I'm just going to bring up, in fact, I'm going to make a new one. I'm going to go into I was muscle memory, go to the wrong menu there to get my level sequence. So let's just call this one dog. So I'm going to open up this level sequence and I am going to grab my dog control rig and I'm just going to pop this out like that. I'm going to grab my dog control rig and where is he? There he is. So we'll pull that in there. We've got a dog somewhere in the scene, and what we can see is we've got a skeletal mesh here that's got a control rig component. So I've got all my controls are in there. They were named, a lot of them, by the module builder. If I just go to, I'm going to try and zero this out. In fact, I'm going to pick this position, go here, and where are you? There you are. There we go. So I've got my little dog creature in there, and if I'm in animation mode, I go to this mode or the showing the little icons. So I can very easily affect the size of these in the control rig editor. So I know they're a little bit small, but one of the cool things about the new features in sequencer that I wanted to highlight was if I got my foot or even my feet, you can see there's a lot of controls in here. If I just pick all the feet, let's grab all the feet. There we go. Now we can trim down the visibility of what we've got in the sequencer. So I can go to the top here, I can go to this menu, and I can click on that filter there, and it isolates only the selected controls. So if you've got four controls selected, it will only show you those four controls. So now I can click away, and I can easily get back to just the four things that I care about, which is pretty useful, because when you've got rigs with tons of controls, it can get really messy in here, and they fortunately added that. If you want to go back, click on this one, and it will highlight all the controls again. But that's a pretty nifty little feature. So I'm just going to go back in here, select these again. So all the feet. And I'm not sure yet whether we've got like selection sets and things like that I would imagine would start to appear in here, but there's probably other ways of accomplishing that in here anyway. So I've got my four controls, and I'm going to do some horrible animation here just to highlight how this can work. I've got my four controllers. I've keyframed them. I'm gonna lift that up at this keyframe here. I'm gonna key them all again, and I believe this button here will only key the things you've got visible. So not if you've got other things that aren't visible here, it won't key them. I'm going to go back to the beginning here, and I'm just going to middle mouse over here. So middle mouse will move the timeline forwards, but it won't scrub through the animation. So you can see if I left mouse, it will actually scrub through the animation. If I middle mouse, then it won't scrub through the animation. So it's great if you've got a keyframe you want to duplicate, because you can just middle mouse to this position here and then keyframe them all again. And now we've got this kind of thing where we've got all of the legs moving. It's pretty crusty, I know, but now we've got an animated dog. Yeah. Like,
So
that's not a dog.
what did the middle mouse button do, rather?
Oh, sure. So yeah, if you've got the timeline and you're left clicking
Mhm.
and scrubbing through the
Yep.
timeline, you can see how that's moving the joints. It's
Hmm.
moving the animation is playing effectively.
Right. Mhm.
If you want to move the timeline, but you don't want the things to move. So if I go back to the state that I was in here, where I'm like, well, I've got to this point and now those bones are staying there, but I want to go back to that point, but I want to add that same keyframe here over here. What I can do is, instead of copying and pasting them, I can just go to this keyframe, and then if I middle mouse scrub in the timeline, it moves the slider, but it doesn't play the animation. So it keeps the value the same as it was here at the beginning,
Hmm.
and then moves to a different point in time. Now I can keyframe it with the value that it had at the beginning.
Ah, okay, clever. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and that was a thing that we've been able to do in Maya for a long time, but just nice that it's in here as well.